Welcome back, everyone! Excited to be here after 2 whole years away, and what better way to kick it off than with a classic NK65 revamp video. This NK65 is my daily board. It's a great beginner-friendly board, and it's also reliable for those who've been in the hobby for a while, so it's a win-win. I'm going to take you through my build process, what keycaps and switches I used, and some tricks and tips to turn this fairly accessible keyboard into one that sounds and feels comfortable to use. We're going to start this video off with a sound test, with no modifications done to the board or the switches or anything. The switches I used are Glorious Pandas, and again, in the first sound test, they are a bit scratchy, the stabilizers are wobbly, and there are plenty of other imperfections I'm sure you all can pinpoint. At the end of the video, however, there will be another sound test after I take you through the modifications I've made to my board, switches, stabilizers, etc. So stick around for that. Now, the board I was able to put together here for myself is stunning, and that is largely in part because of these keycaps gifted to me by my friends over at Yunzi. These are the Acco Neon Set Cherry Profile, and the color scheme fits with the purple board itself extremely well. Now, I know in general, you would think that the packaging doesn't matter too much if the keycaps are going to be stored on the board itself anyway, but I think it definitely adds to the high-end luxurious feel that one would want when they're putting together a keyboard. I think that putting together a keyboard is kind of like putting together a piece of art, so the little things can definitely add value. With that said, I appreciate how Yunzi was able to package this keycap set with a very sturdy cardboard outer shell and a hard metallic storage box which encapsulates the keycaps. This is perfect if you ever decide to switch up the keycaps, as it provides a nice little storage area for them between uses. Taking a closer look at the keycaps themselves, they are of the Cherry Profile. They are double shot, essentially meaning there are 2 layers of plastic. We can see this blue layered underneath the outer shell of purple. These are PBT plastic keycaps, which I tend to like more than the alternate ABS, as PBT tend to be more durable. Moving on to the board itself, it is an NK65. This is some standard packaging so far, I would say nothing out of the ordinary. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, this keyboard did get to me in one piece. Inside the box, you'll also find this very cute sticker on top of this plastic wrapped travel case. Now, the travel case is a nice touch for sure. Not too many of the budget-friendly boards that I have dealt with come with something like this. It's fabric on the outside, but fairly sturdy, kind of like a suitcase, with a nice little zip securing the keyboard inside, which is further secured by these cute little Velcro straps. Also, it comes with this plastic coiled cable. Not as nice as a custom fabric cable or, something of that nature, but definitely nicer than a basic cable or no cable at all. Finally, there's this little card explaining the VIA software, which sets up the keyboard's lighting. We've made a video tutorial on that too if you'd like to check it out. Now let's take a closer look at this travel case. Solid material as mentioned before, and again, a great touch by Novel Keys. Looking now at the board itself, it is polycarbonate, but it has a silicone dampener inside to add some weight and give it more of a solid feel, which I definitely appreciate. There's little to no bend, so overall a solid board, and there's a spot on the upper right to plug in a USB-C cable. Now for some modifications we can make to the board to make it sound and feel its best, starting with the stabilizers. Out of the box, they are wobbly and unstable, as you can see from how they wiggle around in this clip. To get started with modifying them, I took them out one by one and began my process. I first took them apart. They do come pre-lubed, but the lubing is not quite even, so I just wiped away the old stuff to prep the bars for me to reapply some Krytox more evenly myself. I did this for each stabilizer. On the stabilizer inserts that you can see here, there are these little leg things that come poking out. They look kind of like insect legs, and they contribute to that unstable sound that we were trying to get rid of. To fix that, I took some nail cutters and clipped them off to make a more stable sound. I like to use a nail cutter for this step because it makes a clean, flush cut every time, as opposed to scissors. Also, finding small scissors that have the same effect is pretty hard. From there, I started to reapply some lube more evenly to the sides of the stabilizer inserts. The sides that rub against the housing, that is. I used Krytox 205 grade 0. It's not too thick of a lube, as I didn't want to make the stabilizers too sluggish, but it's just thick enough to create a smooth feel and a less clanky sound with that barrier that it provides. I also went ahead and applied some of this lube to the part of the bar that is inserted into the housing for the stabilizer. Again, making sure to apply the same amount of lube to every stabilizer and apply it evenly so as not to get an uneven sounding board when we're finished. You don't want your modified board to sound worse than the board that you started out with. After doing this for each stabilizer, I went ahead and clicked them back together. Whatever lube variant you choose for yourself, be it thicker or thinner, is totally your preference, but this is the one that I like for myself, that feels the most comfortable. And now, we are still not done with the stabilizers. We have to put them back onto the board. But even with the modifications we've made, there's this last thing we gotta do to make them sounding satisfying, and that is the Band-Aid mod. For this, I took a real Band-Aid and cut out a small piece the size of the surface area of the bottom of the stabilizer housing and placed it where the stabilizer would be resting. What this will essentially do is dampen the noise that comes from the plastic on plastic hitting each other when the stabilizer is hit when you're typing. So that's why this is an important step to prevent that harsh sound. I then clicked the stabilizer in place, and I did this for each stabilizer before moving on to the switches. As mentioned earlier, I used Glorious Pandas for this board. They are a relatively heavy tactile switch out of the box, and they require some mods to get them to their fullest potential. Here I evenly applied Crytox 205 grade 0 to the bottom housing and to the middle area. Once that was done, I put a dash of lube onto the top and the bottom of the spring before gently placing it where it should be on the switch. From there, I placed polycarbonate switch film that wraps around the internal housing of the switch into place. What this does is prevent the wobble that comes when you press on and actuate a switch, providing a sturdier and slightly more rigid feel to each switch. It ever so slightly changes the sound, ridding the board of the deeper notes that can come from a wobbly switch. To finish up the switches, I applied another even layer of lube to the switch stem. Note that there's a small bump on the leg there, and that small bump is what gives the switch that tactile feel. I avoided lubing the bump just because I wanted a sharp, bumpy tactile experience when typing, but if you prefer a more rounded experience, you can go ahead and lube that too. Here I go, putting it all together and snapping that switch back into place. Once this process is done for each switch, you can snap them onto the board itself. No need for soldering, as this board is hot swappable, meaning you can switch out the switches whenever you want. Here I've done that, and I'm just wiping away any excess dust or grime before the keycaps finally get to go on. And here they are. As mentioned before, these Acco neon keycaps are stunning and fit very nicely with the purple case of the board. And here we have our final product, coming in at 12.5 inches wide, so just over a foot wide, and 4.5 inches deep. Nice and compact, and the 65% layout keeps the arrow keys, which is a win for sure. The weight of this board comes out to 1 pound, 13.8 ounces. And now for our final sound test. And there you have it, a totally revamped NK65 with Glorious Pandas switches. This has been my daily board for over 2 years now, and these mods have made a world of difference for my typing experience, be it the way the board feels or the way the board sounds. If you have any questions regarding what I've done here, comment them below. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at customkeys_. That's custom with a K.